Is Indonesia the land of milk and honey? This is the question I will answer today in this video. As you know, I released tons of videos on Indonesia, mostly dating Indonesian women. And I noticed that, I received thousands of comments probably during the past 18 months. I have not counted them. But I noticed that some of my viewers might get a slightly wrong or distorted perception of or about Indonesia, also when it comes to women and other stuff. Because, I praise Indonesia a lot, the life there and the women and the dating and everything. And so the purpose of this video is actually to correct some maybe misperceptions about Indonesia, because there are also some drawbacks for some expats why not to consider Indonesia. Okay, so long story short, I don't want you to get a wrong perception about Indonesia, and Indonesia is not the land of milk and honey. And some of you might say, no, but Marcel, you always portray Indonesia as the land of milk and honey. Exactly, this is what I want to clarify here in this video. That has never been my intention, okay? And why is Indonesia not the land of milk and honey? I will go step by step and discuss a few points here. By the way, if you are wondering where I am, I picked this really beautiful location here, especially for you today. I am in Borneo at the moment. Beautiful place. So, what would be some valid reasons actually, for some expats not to consider Indonesia? What would be these drawbacks? And they are valid drawbacks. First, the women. Yes, surprise, surprise. Yes, the women are pretty and they are sweet and they're very feminine, and this is what actually many Western men who are fed up with dating Western women in America or Europe or other Western countries, they actually want it. They are looking for these kind of women, real women, feminine women. But one drawback in Indonesia is certainly the lower level of English and the Islam. And I will talk about Islam in a second. So these, in my experience, are the most favorite and most common comments I get also from other guys who say, Indonesia is maybe a beautiful country and everything, what you say is true, but the lower level of English, or maybe no level of English at all, and the Islam is really what repels me, what I really don't like about Indonesia. So you see. The second point is the second valid reason is the dating. If you are someone who has been traveling to Thailand for many years and enjoy your life, or travel to the Philippines and enjoyed your life like I did also for many years, Indonesia is not the place for you to consider, because although also most of the Filipinas and the Thai girls are dating for marriage, also the Indonesian women date for marriage at the end of the day, the vast majority of them. But you cannot just let's say, play around in Indonesia like in the Philippines or in Thailand, The sex industry in Indonesia is on a way lower level than in these other two countries, although a sex industry also exists in Indonesia. So if you are someone who needs girly bars and freelancers and whatnot and all this whole sex industry thing, you might not want to consider Indonesia. And I know there are some guys, for them it's important. They just want to be a sexpat and have fun. It's all good. I've done the same thing in my early years in Southeast Asia. So, but I'm saying, I'm just saying, maybe for some of you guys, Indonesia is certainly then too boring, It's okay. Yeah? And besides Bali and Jakarta, if you travel to other even big Indonesian cities, you know, these cities are not Pattaya or Pattaya or Phuket or Angeles City. You know, you won't see many sexy dressed up girls running around in bikinis or short pants. Indonesia is a more conservative country. Yeah, and exactly this is what I don't like about Indonesia. That's why it's boring and that's why I don't want to go there. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Then this is not the place for you to go, right? It's a drawback, depending on your preferences. Although I also received feedback by a viewer of mine, a European guy, who also mentioned just recently to me that when he now walks around Indonesia, not in Bali or Jakarta, but in other places, he started to recognize the beauty of these Indonesian women. Even they cover their head with a headscarf and cover their body because they're Muslim girls. And he's right. When you really look carefully and observe these girls, they are just really beautiful girls with class, you know, I would even claim. So point number 3, another drawback for some expats or Westerners, and why Indonesia certainly is not for them the land of milk and honey, is the Islam. And this is a big argument, one of the biggest arguments and comments I always receive. Indonesia is a Muslim country and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know what these guys think. I think their ignorance level is still very high about Indonesia. It's not their fault, and many of them think Indonesia is just probably another radicalized Muslim country, a Muslim nation, an Islamic state, like, I don't know, Saudi Arabia. But this is due to the sheer ignorance. They just hear Islam and Muslim and instantly associate something negative and bad. These are the negative effects of media propaganda during at least the past 24 years since September 11, right? Not many expats actually know that Indonesia has 6 officially recognized religion in the country, officially recognized by the government. 6 religions, not only Islam. You know, Indonesia is not ruled by Talibans, okay? And another comment I always get, it's a very famous comment, is, yeah, you know, and you cannot marry a Muslim girl. If I am a Christian and I want to marry a Muslim girl, that's not possible in Indonesia, blah, blah, blah. Or I have to convert to Islam if I'm a Christian and I don't want that, you know. So I also believed that for a very long time, until I did some research. And I just recently came across some very interesting new facts. Yeah, for example, that in Indonesia, the marriage law does not regulate marriage of couples of different religions. This is very, very important to understand. The Indonesian marriage law does not regulate the marriage of couples of different religions. This is up to the religions themselves, you know. It makes sense that the Indonesian government, or whoever created that law, took this into consideration, because the country is way too diverse, you know. I started also to study a little bit of Indonesian history. It's just fascinating. You learn so many things. If you really want to know what diversity is and how it plays out in today's reality, you study Indonesian history. You will be just baffled, right? How diverse also the Indonesian history is, and what makes up the country today. Yeah. Now, some of you might say, yeah, but then if it is just up to the religion itself to regulate the marriages, then clearly Islam does not allow to marry a Christian. And this is also not true. Why do I know that? yeah, coincidentally, my Indonesian girlfriend, which is from Yogyakarta, her parents are of different faith. Her dad is a Muslim and her mom is a Catholic Christian. How come? How are they married? How did they get married if this is not allowed or prohibited? Yeah, different faith marriages. If this is prohibited in Indonesia by law, if this is never possible, how come my girlfriend's parents are happily married? Sorry, not happily married anymore. They are divorced, but not for religious reasons. You know, domestic violence played a role, and this is another topic for another video. But divorce rates are rising in Indonesia, and I know there are some guys who want to argue with me. You know, when you look at the long-term trend, the 10-year trend, then divorce rates are rising also in Indonesia, like it or not. There is no debate and argument about it, okay? But the parents of my girlfriend are of different faith. And I specifically wanted to know and asked my girlfriend. That was a great opportunity to find out and know. I really wanted to know what is really the matter here with this religion marriage thing. And she told me, and other girls also told me the same, whose parents also were of different faith. My girlfriend specifically and explicitly told me it's up to the families in Indonesia, okay? And it's not nobody else's business, okay? And if the parents, let's say I want to marry my Indonesian girlfriend, and she's a Christian anyway, but let's say I want to marry a Muslim girl, then it's up to her parents to agree to that, you know? That's it. The parents have to agree. It's a parent matter. This is the thing in Indonesia. That's the reality and that's the truth, okay? And I bet even some or many Indonesians don't even know about this, you know? It's kind of a legal loophole, you know? It's kind of a legal vacuum, but I think it's created on purpose anyway. But yeah, the trend also in Indonesia has been a more, I would say, more Islamization. Now, many Indonesians also complain about that. When you look at Indonesia like 20, 30, 40 years ago, I received comments from other viewers, Indonesian women. They say, for example, like 30, 40 years ago, barely anyone wore a hijab, a headscarf in Indonesia, you know. It's true, the more conservative forces in Indonesia, they march on and they want to dominate. This is clearly a trend in Indonesia. It has been for the at least past 2 decades. If this is something positive or negative, I leave it up for debate. The next point, which is to consider why maybe Indonesia is not the land of milk and honey, like you always claim, Marcel. It's the infrastructure. Although I will say that the infrastructure in Indonesia is better than the Philippines, for example, maybe other Southeast Asian countries. But there are still things left to be desired, obviously, and of course, especially on islands like Sumatra and Sulawesi. I find the airline, airport infrastructure great in Indonesia. This is due to the fact that Indonesia consists of over 17,000 islands, similar to the Philippines, which has like 7,700 islands, right? So people hop around by plane a lot. So the airport infrastructure, the flight infrastructure is great. The flights are cheap. This is all good. You have a train system on Java Island, the only really functioning train system, and on other islands you don't have that. So there are fragments of highways also in place on Sumatra and Java, these toll roads, yeah, but still there is way more still to be built and covered. So there are developments going on, but I think Indonesia has not a highway system like Malaysia or Thailand, for example, okay? There's no MTR or MRT system like in Singapore or in Hong Kong, or maybe like in Thailand or Malaysia. In Jakarta, the biggest city, I think they're building something there now, I don't know. But Jakarta has a well-functioning urban train system, so this is covered well. But other than that, you have to fall back to buses and to riding apps like Gojek or Grab, you know, renting a motorbike or renting a car, you know. And in smaller cities anyway, you might have some fraction of a bus system, maybe minibus system, and the rest is done through riding apps like Grab and Gojek. So, and even Bali, when you look at Bali, on one hand, many people say and claim Bali is the most developed place in Indonesia. Yes and no. Maybe Bali is well developed in terms of like Western stuff, when it comes to bars and drinking and all this stuff, you know. There's no issue. You can find this in Bali. You can find heaps of sports spas and all this stuff you can find in other Western countries. But look at the traffic situation in Bali. This rather resembles a third world country, right? It's a disaster. It's a nightmare, the traffic in Bali, for several and different reasons. But in Bali, you have basically no bus system at all. There are some buses, but nobody really uses them, you know. People use cars and motorbikes, that's it. It's a disaster, you know. So anyway, next point is the internet. Yeah. Why maybe some expat would be repelled not to decide for Indonesia. But overall, I've met some digital nomads, and I know there are, especially on Bali, there are living many digital nomads, and they're living there long term for 1 or 2 years. So that should tell you something. So that means the internet infrastructure cannot be that bad, right? And I know these digital nomads, they're happy in Bali also because of the internet infrastructure, and this is also my experience in Bali or in Jakarta or in other places in Indonesia. The internet is stable, it's reliable. Yeah, there are really barely any brownouts. Yeah, very, very seldom, unlike in the Philippines, because I've been asked this question, Marcel, you know, where can I have strong internet in Indonesia? Name me the cities and the places. So there is no worry about that. Yeah. But if you really need, I don't know, high speed, super high speed internet or what, then maybe Indonesia is a drawback. Okay. Another point is diseases, which is maybe a point to consider for some expats not to decide for Indonesia, because, you know, the malaria is there and dengue fever is there. Yes, these two diseases basically exist, and I don't know how afraid you are. Never happened anything to me. I never got sick of malaria or dengue fever or anything else. I never had anything in Southeast Asia other than maybe a flu or something like that in 20 years. Yeah? So I had maybe a couple of food poisonings or suspected food poisoning in 20 years, okay? Maybe 2 or 3 times in 20 years. But this is something you should be more concerned than these so-called diseases, you know? And the rate of getting sick. You check out the website of your foreign ministry, and then you can find all these informations there. But really, I never had anything. You know, you also need to just use your common sense, okay? Yeah, what about the hospitals? This is maybe another thing, another drawback for some expats, depending on your age, you know. If you require health care already, then maybe Indonesia is really not the best place to go. You might consider Malaysia, Singapore or Thailand. Although I find the healthcare system and the service, I don't know about the healthcare system, I would say, but the service is at least good in Indonesia, if not very good. There are private hospitals also, which are a little bit more expensive, but they are so clean you can eat from the floor. Looks like a 5-star hotel. They are run very efficiently. I don't know if I mentioned this, but just a few months ago I did my yearly medical checkup in Bali at Siloam Hospitals. This is a private run company. And I paid about $100 and I didn't need to wait. I was done in like 60 minutes. So very quick, very fast, very efficient, and very, very affordable. You know, this kind of health check in Germany would cost me probably $500. You know, so for me, I'm also a healthy guy. I'm fit. You know, I do something for my health, or I should say, I avoid a lot of things which would contribute to a bad state of health. So I take care of myself, so I don't require any medical care or health care at the moment. But for some guys who are a little bit older already, they have a condition, yeah, Indonesia is maybe not, they're not so comfortable, because also the level of English is low here in these hospitals, you know. This is maybe another drawback for some expats, okay? And the last point I want to mention, why some guys will say, no, Indonesia is not the land of milk and honey, how like you always portray Indonesia to be, you know. And again, I'm not saying Indonesia is the land of milk and honey, right? I never done this, you know. Maybe I created these perceptions, you know, and you already found out the hard way. But this is good, you know. You come to the country, boots on the ground, and then you explore for yourself. Don't watch too many of my YouTube videos, okay? And then stuck in paralysis analysis, okay? Do some research, learn, get rid of your ignorance, and then book a flight ticket, and then you come here, and then you see for yourself, and either you like it or you don't like it. And if you don't like it, then bye-bye. Look for a different place, no crime. Indonesia is also not for everyone. I released a video about this anyway. So the last thing is the mentality. Maybe the mentality doesn't suit you also, you know, because you are a Western guy and you are more straightforward and direct and future-oriented, and goals and deadlines and schedules, and time is money, you know. This is how we are wired as Western guys and women, right? But Indonesia is, in case you didn't know, it's a faraway culture, and this is what many people get wrong. They think they can fly from Europe to Indonesia in less than 12 hours and think everything is the same. No, Indonesia is basically, like all the other Asian cultures, a face-saving culture. They are very sensitive people and very emotional, okay? Indonesians and Indonesian culture is relationship focused. This is something very important to understand. Their sense of time is different than our sense of time. I will explain this. Yeah? Indonesians are more past-oriented, and we Western people are more future-oriented, okay? And when you observe Indonesian culture carefully, you will observe that the past has still a strong influence on today's Indonesia and its people, you know. You can see this in their performance of rituals and stuff, you know. Unlike us Western people, you know, we are not past-oriented, we are future-oriented. We need a goal, we are setting goals, right? It's all about goal setting and organization and planning and executing. Time is money, and we need a deadline, right? And if you don't meet the deadline, that's a cardinal sin, right? You're considered incompetent or even an idiot or moron. This is what happened to me in my early years in Southeast Asia. You know, I struggled a lot, I can tell you, as a chef. You know, chefs are special creatures. If you want to know why, I will plug my book here, which you can read. I talked about my early years as a chef and how I traveled around to eventually 16 countries on 5 continents. The link is in the description. If you want to buy the book and read my story, go there. It's very affordable. And as a chef, you have to be no matter you're coming from Indonesia or Germany, as a chef, you need to be very organized. You need to be a hardcore organizer, you know. And Germans are very especially organized and punctual people, you know. It's just in our DNA and our blood. And I am a punctuality fanatic, you know. You can imagine I struggled a lot. And I was not aware of these dynamics, you know. Crazy. I freaked out a lot in my early years, you know. My ex-staff can tell you stories, although today they still like and love me and they're just laughing about it. But I was a crazy ass, I can tell you. And I worked with these people. I wasn't just a tourist, you know. Working with these people is a completely different ballgame, right? And then you have these cultural differences, right? And yeah. And in Indonesia, you know, for us Western guys, it's always this fast, achieving the deadline. Time is money. Come on here, 10 o'clock is 10 o'clock. We have a schedule. We need to follow up. And in Indonesia, the Indonesian approach is more like, no rush, easy, boss. Good things just take time. This is their approach, okay? Everything just takes time. Investing in relationships, investing in ideas or developing ideas, getting projects on the way and realized and done, everything just takes time. Time is really the key asset. Yeah? If you want to have a good outcome or a good result, then time needs to be invested, you know? And then it takes time. And we Westerners, we go crazy, you know? We have this deadline, we need to meet it. We need to work overtime now. That's why the Indonesians also have this concept of rubber time, you know, rubber time. We Germans, when I hear this word rubber time, I already cringe, I want to run away, you know. There is no rubber time system in my philosophy, you know. My time is firm as a stick, you know. But in Indonesia, it's rubber time, similar to the Philippines. Good luck with setting an appointment for dinner in the Philippines, and you say you agree to meet at 8 p.m. Filipinos will show up at 8:30, maybe 8:45, maybe 9 o'clock. We will never understand this, we will never comprehend this, but this is also in Indonesia, you know, so it's different. This is one of the strongest and most crucial cultural differences to understand between Indonesia and the Western world. They are past-oriented, they're focused more on relationships. Relationships is super important for Indonesian people, and then good things take time. No rush, no push. Why we have to finish it today? We can also do it tomorrow. And we don't worry about tomorrow past noon anyway. This is another concept in Indonesia. So, and these things here I mentioned, these points, and especially the last point, might be a thing where you see, oh no, Indonesia is not really the land of milk and honey as you, Marcel, always portray it to be, which I actually never done. So with that being said, I'm checking out for today, but I have, before I forget, I have a few other points here I want to mention quickly. Yeah, and fewer expats in Indonesia also around, you know, maybe this is something very important for you. You are an expat and you need to be surrounded by expats all the time. You need to see them all day long and hang around them all day long and just see expats. If this is something for you, then yeah, Indonesia is not the land of milk and honey for you. You might go to other places in Southeast Asia. And yeah, the dating, I mentioned this already. Another viewer just commented the other day that he is not happy with the dating sites. Yeah, but this is the same in Thailand and the Philippines, and I will release a video about this in the future because there's also something important to say about. You just need, everybody has different preferences, and what works for me is maybe not working for you. And then also you need patience in Indonesia, even on the dating site, you know. So conclusion, long story short, short story long. Here from beautiful Borneo here, wow, I love it. Yeah, so these are the things, the most important things for you to consider, yeah, and why Indonesia is maybe perhaps not the land of milk and honey. I hope I could clarify a few things here for you, and yeah, thanks for watching, and I'm gonna see you in one of my next videos. Take care, bye bye, looking forward to your comments.